My name is Patrick Beverly. Before I went pro in basketball, I used to do some crazy things like selling drugs to different people. I only did it because me and my mother were poor, and we wanted to make it out of the hood, which we did eventually. We lived in a rough neighborhood in Chicago in a one-bedroom apartment. My mother worked 3 jobs getting paid on a minimum wage. That is how poor we were. My aunt and cousins would sometimes take turns watching me as an infant. As I was getting older, my mom would date a bunch of drug dealer boyfriends. This inspired me to sell drugs. One night in August of 2008, I met up with my homeboy named Donovan. I sold him some dope and smoked it with him. I don't remember how high I got, but I do remember that I went off the rails that time. After finishing that deal, I went home in my white Dodge Magnum. I was really driving under the influence. It was a huge mistake that I made. While I was driving, I felt like I was on another planet, and I approached the intersection. There were no cars in front of me. I thought the light said green, but in reality it was red. As I was crossing the intersection running a red light, I collided with another vehicle. My car flipped 3 times. I wasn't wearing seatbelts and the windows were down. My mindset was now coming back to real life slowly. I don't even know how I even survived the crash. I was able to climb out of the car without a scratch. I heard someone call out my name in front of me. As my eyes were still adjusting from all the weed that I smoked, I saw a guy standing outside next to my car with the hazards on. He said that he had my phone after it flew out in my car. I said to him to call the ambulance. I said it loudly, as I was still trying to catch my breath. I remember the EMT arriving and I told them my story. They were amazed at how I was still alive. I later on healed from that trauma, but I suffered an emotional scar that has not healed to this day. A few weeks after the car accident, something even more tragic happened. I was driving a new affordable car, and Donovan was in the car with me. We were just shooting dice at the corner of a street. We were now driving to a park. We hung out for a little while, and then I decided to go back to my grandmother's place. I kept insisting for him to come with me, but he told me that he'll meet up with me later. I just left by myself, leaving him behind. This will be the biggest failure I've ever had in my life. Not too long ago, after driving off, I got a call from a nearby hospital and I was told that Donovan had been shot multiple times and had died. I was at a loss for words. My brother-like figure had just died, and he was the closest person to me in the world. I then told his mom, and she even started to cry. She sounded like a baby, honestly. She told me to pick her up and that we'll go to the hospital together. We got to the hospital and we had to identify Donovan because he wasn't carrying any ID at the time. I should have never brought him over there in the first place. I didn't know what I was thinking. I would have nightmares for 2 months straight. I know this sounds crazy, but after Donovan died, I would sometimes talk to him like a ghost. I was basically talking to the air. 2 days after he died, I got a call to play pro basketball in Ukraine. I was 20 years old at the time. The reason why I wasn't in college at the time is because I had academic issues. I would also have constant insufficient grades, and I was suspended from school for some time because I hired and paid someone to do a college essay for me. Although he did it, he later ended up snitching on me about this. At first I kept denying it, but I eventually owned up to it and accepted full punishment for it. Nevertheless, I accepted the contract because there was nothing else I loved more than basketball, and I would actually earn money playing basketball as my family could use the money I would earn. I also did this for my homie Donovan. He would have wanted me to keep going, no matter what happened. I know how proud he is of me in heaven, after all the accomplishments of making the NBA and having some accolades along with it, which included getting 3 All-NBA defensive teams. I love you, Donovan, and this story is for you. I'll see you soon, and we'll reunite in heaven, but I still have a long way to go. This event happened in late 2004. It was my senior year in high school and I couldn't wait to graduate. I went to a high school called Winston Prep, which is located in Union Square area in New York City. It is a special education school that goes from 6th to 12th grade. At an early age, I was diagnosed with severe ADHD and OCD. Some others had Asperger's and autism, excluding severe autism. I would mostly talk to people who were like me because we could understand social cues and be more normal than others. My school never went by grades, rather by disability, and we would have the same learning classes with the same exact people. I would mostly get along with everyone in my class. Everyone in my class was pretty friendly and acted normal, but there was this one guy who was really messed up in the head. His name was Quentin. I always saw him as a weird kid because he didn't have that many friends, and he would always stare at people, which included me. Besides that, I didn't really have a problem with him because he was a pretty chill dude, as I thought he was, and I could actually have a conversation with him. There was this one day when my history teacher was talking about the 2004 presidential election because it was coming up, and George W. Bush was running again for president for the Republican Party. Now, I'm not trying to stereotype politics here, but Republicans aren't that strict when it comes to gun laws. Anyways, the teacher asked the whole class, "Who do you want to win for president? George W. Bush for the Republican Party or John Kerry for the Democratic Party?" When it was Quentin's turn, he said he wanted Bush to win. He gave his reasons, but his main reason is the gun laws. He said everyone should protect themselves if they're armed with guns. He then told the whole class that he had owned a BB gun and planned on bringing it to school one day. We all laughed and thought he was actually joking. But later on in the semester, that turned out not to be the case. One day, Quentin didn't come back to class. I thought he was sick or something, but I turned out to be wrong. It was 10 in the morning on a Tuesday, and I was already in my second class of the day. The day started off how it usually would. 5 minutes into class, we heard the lockdown siren go off. The teachers would usually inform us we would have a lockdown drill or a fire drill the day before the drill. But I knew for a fact that this was not a drill because they never informed us the day before. About 10 minutes into the lockdown, I heard a bunch of commotion outside of my classroom. I didn't know what was going on because the blinds were shut, and we weren't supposed to know because it was a real-life lockdown. I also kept hearing a bunch of lockers slamming. After that, we heard the stairway door open, and then silence. I would say like 3 minutes later, the principal announced on the loudspeaker that the lockdown was over, and the school would be closing early that day because of our safety. I then exited the school and turned my flip phone on. I had a flip phone because this was before Samsungs and iPhones came out. I would have it off during school because I didn't want to get it confiscated, and I wanted to learn in school. I got a text from my friend saying, "Dude, this is crazy. Quentin just got arrested for bringing a BB gun to school." I remember a month earlier, he said that he planned on bringing it one day. Everyone thought it was a joke, but he sure as hell was not joking. I didn't know what intentions he had with that gun, but logically, it was something not good. I was able to finish my senior year strong, and I'm currently an English teacher at a middle school. I don't know where Quentin is today. I don't really care, but I'm 85% sure that his life didn't end up too well. I used to work as a waitress from 1990 to 1991 as a part-time job while I was completing my associate degree in business. Although I made friends at my job, I didn't really like it because I was only getting paid $7.25 an hour. Every day went the same exact way, except one day would stick with me until the day I vanished from this earth. I was working one night and I saw a dusty couple along with a teenage girl enter the restaurant. I sat them down at the table. As they all sat down, the girl accidentally pushed her fork off the table. I picked it up for her, and as she took it from me, she grabbed my hand pretty firm while taking the fork from me. I didn't think too much of it at first, and just continued my shift. I came by near the table again when I was on my way to grab someone's food, and the girl again dropped her fork. I thought it must have been a coincidence, and I gave it back to her, and she took the fork again from me, and also squeezed my hand again, though this time it was more firm. I walked by their table 2 more times, and both times she would also drop her fork, and both times I picked it up for her, and she would squeeze my hand both times, but after every squeeze it felt tighter and tighter each time as she did it. Now I knew she was doing it intentionally. Something had to have been wrong, but it was hard to tell at that very moment. Not too much later, they eventually finished their meals and all three of them had left the restaurant. I went over to their table to clean it, and as I picked up the plate, I saw that there was a napkin under the plate, and it had words on it, and it said, "Help me, call the police." My mind was now racing with dark thoughts. Was this girl kidnapped? Was she trying to escape her captors? Who were those people that she was with? It was so hard to process what was going on. The whole week I thought about this girl. I felt so bad for not realizing the situation she was actually in. It kept hitting me like a bullet. The more I thought about her, I made a very disturbing resemblance. That girl, she looked so familiar, and that's when I connected the dots. I recognized this girl to be a missing person for years now. It had to be none other than Antoinette Cadito. Her whole face and body physique matched her description. Every night before I go to bed, I always remember that encounter. I kept feeling like I was the worst person in the world. I should have picked up on her hints that she was in trouble. I could have ended her suffering of being kidnapped, and I could have helped return her to her loved ones. Antoinette's mother, Penny, had died in 1999 due to cardiac and liver issues. Now that I think about this case more, I strongly believe that her mother had something to do with her disappearance. She had to have sold her daughter. Every interview, she didn't look concerned with her daughter being abducted and held against her will. I feel sick to my stomach every time I think about this. It is still unknown where Antoinette is as of today. This mystery has never been solved. Although law enforcement officials and I believe she is deceased, she is still listed as a missing person. I just really hope that wherever Antoinette is today, that she has found peace, and I hope that she is no longer living a life of pain.
Nightmare Files.